We're on. Hello, everybody. Sorry, wake up. How you doing? Few number of folks. Good. Couple thumbs up out there. Good. Thanks for coming out to a session that is primarily focused on design. That a pretty much a deep down and dirty nerd conference where folks are getting into code and all sorts of things. There'll be some of that here as well. But this is specifically about sort of up-leveling it a little bit and talking about design. My name is Mark Malone. I work at Apple. I'm part of a technology evangelism group. We're a team of about 16 people, and we work exclusively with outside developers. We work with people like you that are building unique experiences for our platform, and we sort of segregate ourselves across all different sort of frameworks on the platform, from user experience to deep sort of technical knowledge, and we're here to give advice to folks like you on how to build something great for our platform. I'm super honored to be here because of this. We have an amazing partnership with Salesforce that is really making it easy for folks to go and build applications that feel like they belong on our platform, but still communicate with a rich Salesforce back end. And you know, there's three legs to the stool of this partnership, but the one that is nearest and dearest to my heart is an SDK that you can drop in your native iOS application and communicate with all of the services that exist on the back end. So from an Apple perspective, this is ideal. There's nothing that keeps you from getting between the hardware capabilities, the operating system capabilities, but still be able to access the transactions, the rows and columns that sit on the back end. That's sort of the best of all worlds. My particular role is all about business apps. I want to make sure that people that are building business apps for our platform are building things that your end users are actually going to love, and that might be sort of front for all of you in what you want to go and create. But the reality is, there's a lot of business apps out there that don't rise up to sort of the level that people have expectations for, especially when we're compared to the consumer platform. If you look at our devices, you'll see, especially on our iOS mobility platform, we're an enterprise company. We have devices that are used in all sorts of enterprise contexts, right? Whether it's on the shop floor, it's in the back office, in manufacturing, whether you're working in retail, either in the front doing facing of shelves, those types of things, or working in the back doing stocking. Or if you're in some sort of transport or mining or those types of capabilities, there's an iOS application that is out there and running on these devices and built specifically for business and use cases. And we've got a business website where you can take a look at the various stories behind each one of these if you're really interested in sort of how we go and make these things resonate. So it's really all about building great business apps for our platform. You guys know how to build business apps. We want to make sure that they're things that really belong. And the way that we make sure that they belong is we sort of stand them up to our competition. Our competition are the app stores that exist for every one of our platforms. Millions of people use our devices day in and day out. They download these apps, they kick the tires on them, and they use them. These are typically consumer apps that they use. And that really sets the bar for what their expectations are going to be for our business applications. I mean, there are literally millions of these applications, and they're sort of telling people what should be considered sort of the baseline from a user experience, from a design perspective, from a functionality perspective. And so it's all about making sure that we look at this particular set of applications and the human interface guidelines that Apple provides and make sure that the business app still fulfills that business functionality. It's got to do the job. But also when it stands up from a technology, from a fit and finish to these other ones, people say, yeah, this thing looks like it belongs on my device. It's using the same sort of technologies. It's doing really advanced things. Great, it's an equal citizen versus like, I got to use this thing for work. I hate doing it. So anyway, it really all comes down to providing great design. And a lot of times people, when they think of design, they think of aesthetic. They think about how something looks, right? It's all about, I don't like the color choices used, or sort of the layout, the information architecture has got me feeling janky. But aesthetic is something that is fleeting, right? I mean, if you take a look at this photo here, this was an aesthetic from the 70s, right? I mean, it's got a particular look, right? I mean, it's actually, some of these styles might be coming back. These guys actually look pretty hip and cool, except for the lung cancer and the mouth cancer from the pipe. And I mean, that part will probably never come back. But I mean, that's a style that has a point in time where it's relevant. This bad boy as well, same sort of period, right? It was a pretty badass car back in the days, but it's pretty dated, and I don't think this particular one is ever going to come back. So aesthetic has this thing that is very much a snapshot of time. Even technology hardware, right, has a certain aesthetic that ties it to a point in people's lives. And this is the original gangster iPhone, right? And it looks great. It rocked the world when it first came out. If you look at all the icons, they really resonated with people because they were like true depictions of physical things. This is the first time people are tapping around on glass and expecting actions to happen as a result of it. So we wanted the iconography to really look like those tangible things that people would pick up and manipulate in real time. I mean, it had fairly limited capabilities, right? There was a ton of built-in apps, but you know, as Steve said when he got up there, it was primarily a phone. Who uses the phone anymore? A browser, we do that, and a media player. Further along, an app store came out, and that changed the whole profile as well for that, right? Nobody's using the phone. People are using messages. People are using apps. The browser is still used, but it's predominantly an app economy again. And again, that app store, the apps that you see it is really what set the bar. And so from an aesthetic perspective, this looked beautiful back then, but it feels like it's part of a period. And here's the current period. This is what it looks like on the latest and greatest version of the iPhone. And this is the current aesthetic. So when I get up and I talk about design, I talk about well-designed, and I try to broaden it up a little bit more to talk about more of the sort of the feature set, the technology, interaction patterns, those types of things, just to get people away from the I don't like the way this thing looks perspective. So it's a little more complicated. And I have typically 7 things that I talk about. I've boiled it down to 3 for a lightning talk that I'm giving here. Hope I'm not talking too fast. But predictable. We want our applications to be very predictable, inclusive, as well as useful. And I'll spend some time into each one of these. On the predictable side, right, we don't want people to have to learn how to use our applications. We want them to know how to use it sort of right out of the bat. And the first part is, how do they interact with this thing? What are the touch points for it? We're not building applications that are mouse-based or sort of a desktop world, right? We're dealing in an environment that is very specific to this platform, which is all about touch. People are interacting with these screens. And so when we first think about bringing that desktop application over, this is the first thing that we have to deal with, is that it's not mouse-based, right? We have fingers that we can use. The nice thing is we can use 10 fingers all at once and have an interactive experience. It's actually multiple fingers, which is something you can't do on the desktop. So we really sort of set the bar a little bit broader from an interactive capability. And it's not just touch. We're not just sort of picking up the ability to click on something with a mouse and, okay, that's just a tap. The reality is the interaction model on these touch devices is much more complex. People inherently want to go and interact with the content that they are able to touch and see on the screen. The minute I can touch something, I'm going to want to play with it. I'm going to want to move it. I want to interact with it. And so we have very common gestures that we want to make sure when we are building business applications, we build them into our business applications as well. If we have an image, a product image that we just pulled from the back end and we display it, somebody's going to want to pinch open and pinch close, zoom in on that content and manipulate it, because they're used to doing it in all the other applications that showed images, right? Whether it's in our Photos app or it's Instagram or those types of applications. So anywhere we see a common interaction paradigm in third-party applications or in the system applications, we want to make sure that we satisfy those as well in a business context. Another piece of low-hanging fruit, of course, is iconography. I mean, who doesn't know what these things mean? Trash, delete, magnifying glass, search, right? Pretty dead obvious. And if you build your business applications using the iconography that's built in, all that training is done for you, right? People know what to go and tap on. They know everything how something's gonna work before they actually go and tap on it. So it's a very safe experience for them. They know to avoid that trash button unless they absolutely want to do it. Now you can go and design all of your own iconography if you want, but the reality is you shouldn't. You shouldn't need to, because these are actually provided for you. They're part of the software development kit. You can go and grab them, place them wherever you need for that particular function. And the other reason is that they will evolve, right? They have a particular aesthetic right now that will evolve over time. These aren't the only way that these particular icons have looked since the day we shipped the first iPhone. It says, as the user updates their system, gets a new version of the operating system on the device, the look might vary a little bit. We might find out that there's a better way to go and do some of these treatments, but the functionality within your app will work the same. We'll just swap out those icons, the system-provided ones, with yours, and we won't blow your layout. It'll look great. Another thing to think about when doing design is animation. Animation gives people context. It takes them from where they started off and where they're going to, and it provides a very sort of non-confrontational way to get people deeper into the data within the application. And so this is just an animation of me tapping on the calendar icon. It zooms up, so I'm zooming into the context of this application. And then I'm clicking on the today, and I'm zooming into that particular day and looking at the events. That's all a very common animation paradigm that we've got. If you're drilling into data, rows and columns, you can provide that same sort of thing. I'm going into a business object, and I'm exploding in it. I'm looking at the details. And when I'm coming back out, I'm just sort of getting a further, higher level, sort of aggregated view of my content. So look at the system animations that we provide and think about, okay, how can I contort that to satisfy that same sort of interaction pattern, that same sort of context switching for the user, makes them feel comfortable, but really resonates with the data that I've got. At the end, that interaction model means that kids can pick up these devices and use them right away. I mean, there's been YouTube videos of children just sort of plapping on things. It's very natural to be able to interact with content, and doing it in a business context is something very, very, very rewarding. And so it's not just young kids. I don't know how many folks out there have grandparents or parents with an iPad who are able to pick it up and just use it right away. There you go. You're a grandparent? You got one. Okay, at least you got one. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's a lot easier to use than a Mac, right? Because it's tactile. People are handling the content. They're interacting with it. And as easy as a Mac is to use, I gave an iPad to my mother-in-law, and she just has blown it away. She knows how to do everything just because it's that much more intuitive. So it's very predictable. Another piece of predictability is function as well. Sort of my pet example is if we're going to go and build medical applications, let's say specifically for a nurse, we want to go and build a nurse application. I would assume that there is one app to fit every type of nurse, because my context view of a nurse is like, well, they go into rooms, they take temperature, they pat people on the head, write notes, and they leave and go to the next. Part of the predictability is to make sure that you're building an application that is very specific. It's not a generalized nurse app that you're going to want to go and create. The reality is you want to create a suite of applications that really fit, that are really customized, that really touch the particular workflow of an individual nurse, at least in this context. Now, it's not about creating a whole ton of apps. It's about making a very predictable workflow for a given use case, for a given user. And if you're sort of doing the Microsoft toolbar where you've got all things to all people within your application, you've kind of lost them, because then they've got to go and fight around, look for the particular function they want. So building something that is very specific for a particular role makes the application use case predictable. They know where to go for a particular thing. They know what to look for. They know it's tuned for their role. And so just a couple examples to walk through here. We've got one that was built for a hospital RN, right? It's all about showing patient information, what's going on with a given patient, how I can go and do my rounds so things are ordered by time. If I look at a hospital lead, it's much more about what does a hospital look like? What's going on? What's going on in all of these rooms? Their role is actually different. Still a nurse, but their role is to manage people coming in and out of the beds, make sure people are moving along. Hospital tech, sort of same thing as a nurse. However, it's all about drawing blood, plugging in equipment, doing those things. Not the same amount of personal information needs to be displayed here, because they're not really touching the patient all that much. And finally, the home RN. This is still a nurse, but this is somebody that makes the visits to the patient in their home. And so what do they need that's specific for them? Well, they need a picture of the house. What does the thing look like? Where are the doors? Is there a dog there? Who are the care providers that are in and around? Again, this application is tailored for that particular individual, and it makes it a very predictable use case for them. So that was predictable. Next little piece is inclusive. Inclusivity means that we're going to address a lot of people with our application that have all sorts of disabilities. A lot of people don't think when they build an application that there are that many people in the world that will want to use their application but actually can't. I mean, but 1% of the world actually has one of these cognitive to hearing disabilities. And when we build an application, we want to make sure that if one of these individuals is part of our workforce, they can use our application just as well, right? So we want to make sure we build business apps, we accommodate these particular use cases as well. And the ask to you folks as designers and developers is to go into the accessibility setting that we've got built into our devices and just start flipping switches. Run your application and then turn on VoiceOver, for example, which will speak the interface, and then just close your eyes and see if you can work your app. Are you able to navigate through that whole thing the same way that somebody that was sighted could? You win. That's great. You've added at least one net new person to your particular application. There's a slew of options in here, all sorts of things that you can do. Play with the contrast, play with the colors, basically accommodate just about every accessibility issue that somebody might have, even to not interacting with the screen at all by using your digits, using clickers or using your voice, those types of things. So a ton of features in there. The key is when you're designing, think about this. When you're testing, definitely test with these features as well. And sometimes it's just as easy as playing with the contrast, right? Just going and flipping a switch and saying, okay, if I change the contrast on this particular screen, can I still read it? Does it still make sense? This person's completely colorblind. They see no color. Does it still make sense? Does it resonate? Can they use this particular application? If you're looking for some use cases that are built into the OS, then this is an example of pulling up the Maps application. We've got a setting where you can go and slide basically what is the text size for the entire operating system. And your application should adjust accordingly. As long as you're using dynamic type, we're going to go and send that message to your view, and your type will automatically grow. The key is that you need to test it. And this one in particular is even more useful for most folks because it's got something that people that just don't want to put on their glasses will want to use. Same sort of thing. We've got it supported across the OS. You can try it in different applications, turn it up. And then finally, world ready, making sure that the application that you're building is using the standard interfaces that we provide. What that means is if somebody sets their language to be a right to left language, then the interfaces will automatically swap. We do that on the platform for you. You just need to make sure that your application accommodates that, right? We do it for you. Just make sure you're using the native controls, and we'll do the flip for you. And, of course, color choices make a difference as well. This is the same UI, but, of course, if I'm in China, then red is actually good, and green is actually not that great. So you'll see the color changes based on the nationality there, the way that you're signed in. The stock is down, but it's green. Does that make sense? Well, it does in certain contexts. So that's inclusive. I'm going to just rip through the next little piece here. Useful. So being useful is beyond just providing something that is sort of hits the business need. Being useful actually means doing more, doing a lot more for the user. And it really comes down to taking advantage of the hardware that's built in. We have a ton of sensors like gyroscope and a compass and just sort of hardware features so this device really knows where it is. And pairing it with the operating system to take advantage of these things that you can use to make it easier so your user doesn't have to enter as much data, or that you can pre-fill things or presume things based on those technologies that are there. So just a couple quick examples that take advantage of device features. This is my favorite poster child for this. It's called Room Scan. It's an iPhone app that you pick up and you place against the wall, and you move it from wall to wall. And in the end, you get a layout of the particular wall, and it's got all the sizes on it. And the way it does it is these devices have a compass in it, a gyroscope. It knows you're walking through the room and holding still, and it builds this map at the end. Very pedestrian hardware, but a really powerful end game there. I didn't have to go and measure that. Another one is a weather application. This one is called Dark Sky. It's a great application. It gives you hour-by-hour weather. We've got tons of weathers up on the App Store. This one has some really nice videos, some nice features that will remind you to go and get your umbrella or tell you when rain's coming. But the killer feature for this one is the fact that it uses the built-in barometer on the device to give hyper-local weather information. Barometer and weather go hand in hand. It's all about air pressure. And so all of these iPhones running this application are like little mini weather stations moving around. And again, it's very much an easy to go and grab technology. Final couple of things are machine learning. We use machine learning like crazy. If you want to search through photos, you can just type something and it'll pull up a photo that resonates. We also have the ability to do tracking of facial features, gestures, those types of things. We use them for things like fun and emojis, right? But we also use them for the camera, right? When we're taking a picture of somebody, there's actually a little video that we're collecting. And then at the end, when the picture is done being taken, when they let their thumb off, we'll go and use machine learning to choose what is the best photo along there. And we use that eye detection, mouth detection piece to go and choose that best one. Are they looking at the camera? Are their teeth showing? Are they smiling? Their lips unturned? Maybe their eyebrows are up. That's how we go and pick the best one there. So that's how it's built into our applications. You can build it into business applications as well, right? You can train machine learning models on products that are part of your product database and then use them for all sorts of cases. We're using it for basically like a planogram, looking around, making sure the stock information on each one of the products, it's identifying the particular shoe, it's calling to the back end, it's pulling back product information on it as well. And it can also zoom back and say, oh, you know what, that shoe actually goes over in that corner as well. And again, this is all based on machine learning. The final one is augmented reality, high tech, but again, something that's very useful in business. This is an example of our measure application. It's a way that you can go and put 3D information, 2D information right in the camera view. So this is me looking at a table in my office and then dropping a measurement around it. And it's overlaid there. So when I walk around the table, that measurement stays right there. So it's a combination of digital assets and then real content that's coming through the camera. And it's great if you want to go and maybe you're doing sales, you want to do product placement in a particular area, and you've got these great chairs and tables that you want to place in an environment. You want to show the person that's the store owner what it's going to look like there, right? What is that going to look like sitting over there? Well, you can project that table set there, the umbrellas, those types of things, and say this is what it's going to look like. As they look through, they see the actual data behind or the actual scene behind, but then it's overlaid with the information that you want to show them. So it can be sort of any sort of arbitrary information, but it simulates it really being there and has a great effect. A couple other ones just to sort of round it out. This is one for doing color. It's the ability to choose any wall within your house. Oh, sorry. Let me go back and show you that one real quick. See if it starts automatically. There we go. The idea is that you start a project, go in, tap on a wall, and say, oh, I want to set the color of that wall to this, that, and the other. Again, a very useful utility. Lots of ways that you can go and do the same sort of plane detection and then play with the pixels to bend it to your will in your application. Again, this is in the App Store. A lot of fun to play with. And again, super useful for this particular business that the painters are actually using. And then the final example is one called iScape, and this is for folks that are landscapers. Landscape business, they want to basically go and build up a plot plan, what it's going to look like in a particular area, maybe of your yard or a golf course. This is a video I created at Apple Park, but you can go, you can measure a particular area, and then you go and choose a texture for that particular plot. You can choose brick, grass, whatever you want to go and lay down there. And then this is for doing landscaping, so it's got a bevy of plants that you drag and drop and plop in there to give a good feel for what it's going to look like. And when this is all done, you give it to your landscaper. It's got a list of the plants that they need to go and purchase, and they're good to go. And actually, you can even share this particular animation in real time with somebody else that's got an iPad and is running the same app. So you can go out there, place plants around, place textures around, and really give them for a feel while they're somewhere else and actually watching over your shoulder. So that's a quick run through some useful applications. We've got a ton of other ones. Come and talk to me afterwards if you want some more quick feedback. I'm just going to run you through some quick resources before I get chased off the stage. First and foremost, we have a human interface guidelines website. This is for technologists as well as designers because it talks a lot about UI, but it also talks about UI in the context of functionality. And so if you're interested in augmented reality, the Human Interface Guidelines actually has a conversation about how to purposely put that in an app and how to go and use it. So it's a really nice cross-section website for folks that are doing both design as well as development. Of course, we've got templates for folks that want to jump into Sketch or XD, build out applications just in design mode using those tools. All the standard widgets are there. The latest version of the mobile SDK just came out, 7.1. Definitely grab that because it's the latest and greatest and you want to use that. And then finally, Trailhead has a ton of resources for providing sort of a double click into some of the things that I've talked about. So whether you're new to our platform, want to learn Swift, or you want to do a tutorial that builds a fully built out application, the trail insurance application, it's time well spent in each one of these modules. I think it's a great way to really get up to speed on all these technologies. There's a landing page for all of the trails here. Just look for getting started with iOS development, and it'll take you through all this content. And last but not least, we have a booth area right over there. And so if you have any further questions, or if you want to kick the tires on the SDK, you've already done it, and you want to bring up some issues or other questions, meet us over there. We're going to head over there right now. So with that, I'm out of breath. Thank you for coming. Thanks.